So I don't know. Deborah's kind of been our contact on the national level for the past 8 months or so.
Yeah, we haven't been working with anybody who wants stem cells. We've just been working with people who want particular tissues.
Oh,
particular, like they want cardiac, or they want eyes, or they want neural.
So it's a little hard because there's a lot of noise, hard to understand. But she says we don't have anybody that really wants stem cells. We get people who want the heart, or cardiac, as she calls it. They want eyes. They want the neural system. They want the spinal cord.
Spinal cords. So, I mean, that sort of thing. Certainly everything gonads. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Gonads.
Yeah.
They want gonads.
Oh yeah.
Oh, my
boy.
God.
They want gonads.
Everything we provide is fresh.
Stop.
Is that amazing?
As every good butcher tells you,
Holy cow.
everything we have behind the counter is fresh. As every good butcher will tell you, everything we sell is fresh.
A department that is focused on our abortion providers, and the head of that department is here, and I'm sure they have, in essence, at their fingertips, information about volume and second try versus first try, and so on. And I think they would be the right people to explore whether affiliates are different. Obviously, we would have the potential for a huge PR issue on doing this.
Obviously, they'd have the potential for a huge PR issue
For doing
this.
But everything they have is fresh. Now, I read a story about a woman named Abby Johnson. This is a remarkable, remarkable woman. She is a woman who went to work for Planned Parenthood, and she was named the Employee of the Year in 2008. She left in 2009 because of the things that she saw from the first day, and then she grew numb to it, and then she had an awakening. She joins us now. Welcome to the program, Abby Johnson. Hi,
Thank
Abby.
you so much for having me on.
I'm thrilled to meet you. I've read your story, and I've read what you have said and what you have seen, and I find it remarkable. Could you just take us through some of the things that I'd like you to talk about the refrigerator and the security codes and everything else that just show how dark and demonic this is.
Sure. Well, I worked at Planned Parenthood for 8 years. I was their clinic director in Bryan, College Station, Texas. And, I got into Planned Parenthood because I was basically sold the talking points. I was told that they were there to help women, that we were there to help, poor women get health care, and that abortion was just a really small part of what we did. And, honestly, it was what I didn't know about Planned Parenthood. That's what really got me into trouble. I was raised pro-life, but we weren't activists of any sort. We didn't sit around the dinner table and, talk about Planned Parenthood or what they did or anything like that. And so once I started working there, that was really when the numbing began. I remember being told after, working there for a while that our alarm code was 2229 because that spells baby. And everybody in the office thought that was just so funny and so ironic. And I remember in August of 2009, the year I left, we had a budget meeting with my supervisor. And I remember looking at the budget and thinking, something has to be wrong here, because they were beginning to impose an abortion clinic quota, a certain number of abortions that we had to perform in order to meet our budget. And in order to receive financial incentives, in order to receive bonuses. And that number had doubled from 2009 to 2010. And that didn't make sense to me because, I believed, I told the media, I told my family, I told my friends that our goal at Planned Parenthood was to reduce the number of abortions. So if that were true, then why in the world were we doubling our abortion clinic quota? And I remember saying something to my boss about it, and she just started laughing, and she said, well, we wouldn't want to reduce the number of abortions, Abby. This is how we make our money. And, at the time, I didn't know if it was that the organization was changing or if it was that I was just finally high enough up in management now that I was seeing what the organization had been about all along. And that was profit. That was money. And then ultimately in September of 2009, I witnessed a live ultrasound-guided abortion procedure. And that's different than how we usually performed abortions inside of Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood Federation of America, their standard is that abortions are performed in a blind manner. And so the abortionist will take a suction instrument and will just blindly poke around inside the woman's uterus until he thinks he has enough blood and tissue in a glass jar. That glass jar goes through a pass-through in the wall to a lab called the POC lab. Now, POC stands for Products of Conception. That's obviously the baby, but you can't say baby inside of an abortion clinic. So we said POC or POC, or if the staff was feeling funny, we said that it stood for Pieces of Children. And someone inside of the lab called the POC technician would reassemble the parts of the baby to ensure that everything was accounted for, to make sure that we didn't leave a head or a hand or a leg inside the woman's uterus. Then it would either go to a research company that was paying us for the baby's body parts, or it would go into a freezer that we called the nursery. And there it would wait until a group like Stericycle, a medical waste company, would come and pick it up. And that was just the way that I knew abortions to be performed day in and day out. There's about 3,500 abortions performed every day in the United States. So this doctor, though, that came from out of town, he was explaining that at his facility, he actually uses an ultrasound because, surprisingly enough, it's safer if a doctor can see what he's doing while he's performing surgery on a woman. And my job during the abortion was to hold the ultrasound probe on the woman's abdomen. We did the dating, and we found that the baby was 13 weeks gestation. And I could see on the screen that it looked like a baby. It had all of the parts of a baby. And I watched really just in horror as the baby began to recoil and move away from the abortion instrument. And the baby was fighting and struggling for its life. And the doctor asked the technician to turn on the suction machine, and he said, "Beam me up, Scotty." And the machine was turned on, and, I remember watching just parts of this baby being suctioned into that cannula, that suction tube. And the very last thing I saw on the screen, on an x-ray or an ultrasound, anything that's hard, anything that's dense tissue like a bone shows up as white, bright white on the screen. And the last thing I saw was this little tiny backbone floating around in the woman's uterus. And finally I saw it go into the suction tube. I left the room that day just feeling sick, just feeling the numbness removed from my body. And I suddenly realized that this was a child in the womb, that there was humanity there. If there was humanity, that meant there was a human being. And if there was a human being, that meant that that child had human rights and the rights of any of us human beings. And I knew that if there were human rights, then that child had infinite dignity and infinite worth, and that I had to start standing up against abortion, against Planned Parenthood, against other abortion providers that were manipulating and coercing women into having abortion procedures. And so that's essentially what I do now.
Abby, for you to do this, first of all, you're an amazing woman of courage, because for you to do this, it requires you to damn yourself for the things that you were a part of, the things that you turned a blind eye to, and then you've had 2 abortions yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have. One of the, this is really crass to say, but one of the perks of working inside of the abortion industry is that you can get free abortions if you find yourself pregnant. And I've had 2 abortions myself, one surgical abortion and one RU46 abortion. And actually then got married and got pregnant with my daughter, Grace. And I remember being in the clinic, and it was like a joke with my coworkers, oh, Abby's pregnant. I had nausea, the typical morning sickness. I was pregnant with Grace. And, every day, if I would get sick at work, they would say, oh, we can take care of that. And, just sort of the callousness, about the unborn. And even babies that are wanted. I mean, my baby was wanted, but it was just a big stick joke in the clinic, And I remember thinking, when I got past 24 weeks, I thought, oh, I'm so glad I'm past 24 weeks, because now it's too late. It's too late for me to have an abortion, and now they'll stop making jokes about it.
Did they?
They did, for the most part. I mean, at that time, there are still, Dr. Warren Hearn in Boulder, Colorado, he will abort babies up until the date of birth. So, every once in a while they would make a comment like, oh, well, it's not too late for Dr. Hearn, but generally the comment sort of died down, and then eventually they had a baby shower for me inside the clinic after a busy abortion day.
Unbelievable.
So just the irony, I mean, it's completely lost on them inside the industry.
I read this line over and over and over again, and I couldn't believe that they call the freezer where they keep the body parts the nursery, and how women could be this callous and this dark about something is remarkable, is truly remarkable. Abby, you can find her story, and you can find out how you can help her, because she travels the world now speaking out about this. And she is a very clear voice on it. She runs abbyjohnson.org, abbyjohnson.org. But I would invite you to find out how you can help her. How can we help you, Abby? What can we do?
Well, about 3 years ago, I started an organization called And Then There Were None. And it is a ministry that reaches out to abortion clinic workers, those who are still in the industry. And, when we started looking around, I thought surely in, 40 years of fighting Roe v. Wade, there's an organization out there nationally that is, seeking to help abortion clinic workers leave, but there was nothing. There was none. And I knew that there had to be workers like me that were in the industry that wanted to leave, but needed help, that needed assurance that somebody was going to, help them find a job, that someone,
Is all of that information on your website?
Yeah, and people can go to abortionworker.com. And in the past 3 years, we've had 181 abortion clinic workers leave the industry.
Holy cow.
And that includes 6 abortionists who have permanently put down their instruments and now fight for life.
Abby, I would love to have you in studio with us and spend an hour with you, because I think you're fascinating, and I think you're doing God's work clearly. Find out more information at abbyjohnson.org, or is it abortion workers?
Worker.com.
Great. Thank you very much. Abby Johnson,